You're listening to the Positive Distraction Podcast with Alexander McCall Smith.
A few years ago, I published a novel called My Italian Bulldozer. This book was based on a short story with the same title that I wrote a bit earlier. Here it is. The narrator goes off to Italy, where he attempts to hire a car. No car is available. What should he do? I had never written on the subject of wine, but could hardly refuse an old friend. He had been asked to go to Montalcino, a small hill town in Tuscany that produces Brunello di Montalcino, one of Italy's most famous and costliest wines. His editor wanted a piece about the town, its surroundings, good walks, and of course a bit about the wine itself. I happened to have rather rusty Italian. He could not go, would I mind? Of course not. The Italians are a most friendly and sociable race. On the flight to Pisa, I found myself sitting next to a businessman with whom I enjoyed a lively conversation. If I were ever to find myself in Florence, he said, would I visit him and meet his family? I said I would, and reciprocated the invitation. We parted the firmest of friends. I had not booked a rental car, as I had been assured that it would be possible to get one on the spot at the airport. I went to the desk and asked what was available. A brochure was produced, and I looked for my driving licence. I'd left it at home. That's the trouble with packing in a hurry. Things are left behind. Without a driving licence, I was informed it would not be possible to hire a car. They were very sorry, and it looked as if they meant it. My friend from the plane happened to be passing by on his way to report his missing suitcase. Was I in trouble? I explained to him what had happened, and he thought for a moment. Then he said, "But this is not serious. Not in Italy. I have a cousin near here who rents out vehicles to the construction industry and to farmers. He's bound to have a truck that he can let you have, and he never asks for driving licenses, never." I accepted the offer gratefully and accompanied my friend to his cousin's premises a few miles from Pisa. Unfortunately, there was no truck available. They were all out, but he explained that he had a bulldozer that he could let me have for a week. It's actually quite a fast bulldozer, he said. You could easily drive it down to Montalcino. It'll take a bit longer, that's all. Italy is a special country. They do things differently. It would have been rude, I felt, to decline so generous an offer, and so I accepted. I was taken round the back and introduced to the bulldozer. My friend's cousin explained how to operate it and showed me a place where I could put my luggage. "Buon viaggio," he cried out as I set off. The drive down to Montalcino was uneventful. I had no trouble with traffic, mainly because other vehicles seemed to keep out of my way, especially oncoming vehicles that were forced to slow down and drive onto the edge of the road. I drove in the middle. The other drivers were not very good about this, I noticed. I arrived in Montalcino and found a room in a most agreeable little pensione near the old fortress. I parked the bulldozer in a side street where they assured me it would be quite safe. I then set about enjoying the experience of being in this charming hill town with its breathtaking views of the surrounding Tuscan countryside. It was a landscape such as angels would have looked upon in their flight. I made a new friend in the shape of the local priest. He liked to drink an aperitif before breakfast, and I joined him in the splendid fin de siècle café in the main piazza. He observed that I had a bulldozer and asked me on the second day of our friendship whether I might help him with a small personal matter. He happened to own a field that was just on the wrong side of the boundary for Brunello production. That boundary was marked by a long dike, on one side of which only cheaper Rosso di Montalcino was grown. If I could possibly use my bulldozer to shift the dike a short distance, His field would then officially be in the Brunello producing area, and he would get a much higher price for his grapes. I agreed. I've always thought that zone of production boundaries are somewhat arbitrary, and I saw no reason not to help my new friend. So I took the bulldozer and shifted the dike while the priest and his relatives looked on. They were very pleased and invited me to dinner the next day. We shall make delicious Tuscan bean soup, they said. I was sad when the time came to leave, and so I discovered with my new friends. They asked me, though, whether I could perform one final favour for them. A prominent businessman from Rome had recently built a holiday cottage on the edge of the village. Nobody liked him. He was a bully and a braggart, and he had bribed an official to get planning permission for this cottage. Could I possibly bulldoze his house down before I left? I saw no reason not to agree. It was most enjoyable. I drove the bulldozer at quite a pace into the side of the cottage, and the walls began to collapse in a most satisfactory way. After 15 minutes, the structure was completely demolished, and the whole village who'd come to witness the demolition cheered enthusiastically. "You have done us a great service," they said. I drove back to Pisa and returned the bulldozer to its owner. He ran me back to the airport in a combine harvester. "I do hope you come back next year," he said. I looked at the combine harvester. "Perhaps," I said. That's it.
Thank you for joining Sir Alexander McCall Smith on his Positive Distraction podcast. You can find Alexander's books and details of all his forthcoming events on his website, www.alexandermccallsmith.com. All are available to purchase in your local independent high street bookshop, on Amazon, or on bookshop.org. Alexander is the much-loved author of global bestseller The #1 Ladies Detective Agency, the long-running 44 Scotland Street serial novel, the Isabel Dalhousie novels, the new Perfect Passion Company series, and many standalone novels and short story collections. In addition, he is known throughout the world for his reassuring, restorative poetry collections. In moments of darkness in the world, readers turn to his work to lift them from the gloom.